shadow of the Eiffel Tower some of the superb vehicles which will be racing in the Grand Prix Historique de Paris. This a weekend packed of nostalgia because the circuit is also nostalgic. Montlhery to the south of France, the bank track, the track that some of you may remember was the feature event of that wonderful film Un Homme et une Femme. Some glorious cars here from between the 1930s and 1970s, and undoubtedly the showpiece, the three Matras from the late 60s, early 70s. They're the earliest coupe, the Matra 630, the green, the colours of Henri Pescarolo's helmet, the four-time Le Mans winner, one of course, the Le Mans 24-hour race with Graham Hill in that car, the number 15 car. And indeed, he was to race the machine, which is actually owned by Mike Knight of the French-based Winfield Racing School. Two of the other Matras being brought from the south of France, where they now reside in a museum. The Matra Aerospace Company were heavily into motor racing in the late 60s and early 70s. Le Grand Pesca, alongside him, Jacques Chirac's first assistant, Jacques Toubon, so the man who is assistant to the Paris mayor, certainly enjoying his ride there on the circuit and the glorious sound of the V12 Matra engine. Having said that, that particular car is fitted with a Gurney Westlake V8 Ford motor. Apparently the V12 engine was damaged. Well, an interview here with Mr. Toubon. He says really does enjoy these cars. Well, the famous shape of a Porsche 917. David Piper at the wheel. David Piper, who raced for much of the 60s, has been the leading light behind the Supersport series for cars of this particular era. And of course, we may well remember drivers like Pedro Rodriguez and Joe Siffert racing these 917s. The classic GT40. These cars will all be racing later. This particular GT40, a road-going version. I once drove a GT40 on the road. It was a tremendous experience, one that I shall never forget. Drove a D-Type on the same day, incidentally, thanks to Willie Green and the JCB collection for that. Well, there is the famous Montlhery banking, and these various super sports cars just being demonstrated. Ted Rollison at the wheel of this particular 5-litre version. Some of the cars had 4.7-litre engines. There's one of the rather older vehicles, and there is a Cooper T53 Climax engine. A number of different races actually on the program. Lotus 24 BRM there. And again, the 1959 Cooper Climax. John Harper will race that one. In fact, two Coopers. John Cooper, also the man behind that souped-up version of the Mini. This category opened to cars between 1935 and 1965. 3 different classes, in fact, to cover different age groups. 59 to 65, there's Lotus 24s. Rear engine cars should be very competitive. Chris Alford and Rick Hall driving those. John Harper in the Cooper. Lindsay Owen-Jones in a similar T53. Goggles on. Some of the drivers wearing the latest helmets. So there is the front row of the grid. John Harper and Lindsay Owen-Jones. Stretton in his Cooper, third. And the glorious sounds of the late 50s blast off. A couple of very nice older Talbot Largos, T26Cs. John Harper, driving-wise, very much class of the field. John, extremely experienced in VSCC events. Number 18 there's a beautiful Cooper Bristol, Graham Burrows at the wheel. So the two Type 53 Coopers, type of car that Jack Brabham raced, Bruce McLaren raced. Just spotted a Lotus 24 there in the old VRP colours, the light green. In theory, that car should be leading the race. More modern design than those Coopers. A very nice Ferrari Dino, Corrado Cupolini from Italy at the wheel. 38, Lindsay Owen-Jones in his Cooper Climax. Climax engine originally developed as a stationary engine for fire pumps, and then was, with engineer Wally Hassan behind it, made into a racing car engine. Tubular chassis, of course, the technology far away from current Formula One design. Lindsay Owen-Jones leading from John Harper. ERA going through the picture. Cooper Bristol, some of the older cars. There's a two-seater. That's a Cooper Climax, raced against sports cars. It's a central seater, basically a wide-bodied version of those Cooper Climax you see going through, but that was considered to be a sports car, although here it's mixed up with the Formula One machines. 37 is Stretton in his T51 Cooper. Montlhery used to host a round of the World Sports Car Championship way back in the 1960s. 1,000-kilometre races around this track. So the two Coopers still leading. Nice rear fin on that one. Porsche pace car there, just pulling off. And in the background, like a Lotus 21 retiring. I think it was Sylvain de Kramer's car. Lindsay Owen-Jones coming under pressure then from John Harper as they pass the slowly driven Lotus 24. That was the last space frame Lotus Grand Prix car, incidentally. I think that's a car that Innis Island used to race. Up high on the banking, the two Coopers virtually neck and neck, plunge down off the banking into the chicane. And look now, John Harper looking for the inside, and John Harper takes the lead. So a good battle between these two cars. The rest of the field, those two extraordinary Panhard DB 750s. The boys, the noise they make. The Dion rear ends. Tiny little engines. And there's the Talbot Largo. Well, I have to admit to having a dinky of that one. Well, at the front, pretty serious motor race going on, but towards the back, these guys just having fun. So glorious Maserati 6CM, Rennie Maurice at the wheel. So Owen Jones now deciding that second place is all he's going to achieve. This is the last lap. And John Harper sliding the car around. Does great things in the Jaguar D-Type as well. John, based just near Silverstone. So the checkered flag awaits John Harper. So a Cooper 1-2, reminiscent of some of the Grand Prix of 1959. And John Harper wins it. Second, Lindsay Owen Jones. Third, Capelli in the Ferrari Dino, winning his class. Fourth, Chris Alford in his Lotus 24. Well, great fun there for Montlhery. There'll be more of that in just a few moments, but let's take a short break. Back in Montlhery with large doses of nostalgia, particularly for me. 1970 Formula 3 cars, largely lined up, some 69 cars. In those days, I was a team manager for one of these cars that's actually racing here today, a March 703, and being beaten, as it was in 1970, by a Lotus 59 in gold leaf colours. Also in this race, some of the old Formula France cars that raced in that era, and a good battle between a Techno and the Lotus 59, as driven to many race victories in the 1970 season by Australian David Walker, Dave Walker as we called him. 1 litre downdraft engines, we called them the Screamers. They revved to almost 11,000 revs. After every race they came out of the chassis as that Techno drives down the inside, and very close indeed, and indeed the Techno takes the lead off Gilles Boyer, number 21, driven by Michel Mayer, I should say. And these two breaking away from the rest of the field very quickly indeed. And a superb scrap at the front, so reminiscent of the kind of thing that went on back in the 1970s. Several other people getting fairly out of shape. Chevrons, Technos, Martinis, the odd Merlin. And the Lotus 59 is in trouble. And Michel Mayer in the Techno. Could well be an ex-Ronnie Peterson car or Rainer Wissel car. Ray Regazzoni used to drive a car like that in 1968. And number 46 spins off. Just locked it up under braking. That's a Pierre Rignaud in a Martini MK4. And that Techno head and shoulders above the rest of the field as he dives back down the banking and receives the checkered flag. Third was Ferro, second Gamand, Brabham BT2, but a very good drive there. Nice to see these historic Formula 3 cars still racing. And now something completely different. Lotus 7s, well, some of the French drivers of the mid-60s made their name in a very popular Lotus 7 series. People like Henri Pescarolo, they started in these Lotus 7s. And believe it or not, we've got a historic series in France for these. Bernard Perouche off from pole position. All Lotus Super 7s of the period. Number 1, Michel Trollouse, losing it. course. Nineteen of these cars entered for this race. They had 16 laps in front of them. In fact, just jogging my memory. Oh, and very near miss there. These cars were run by various regions of the French Automobile Federation to find the fastest drivers from the different regions. And three of the drivers who came up through the series are already mentioned: Henry Pescarolo, but also Patrick Depaille and Johnny Servoz-Gavin, all to later race in Formula One. Still have Lotus 7 racing in France, Caterham 7s these days, and indeed Jean-Pierre Beltoise's son has been very successful in that series last year. Number 5, Bernard Perouche, and checkered flag there for Bernard Perouche, the winner from Jean-Jacques Gravier. That was the first leg. In fact, the race divided into 2 legs with an aggregate result. So off they set again. Around the Virage de Pont there, into the Virage de la Ferme. Someone just missing the chicane completely. And he continues in the lead, but will undoubtedly be penalised for that mistake. And number 11, Xavier Alvegna, spins off. Of course, remember, these cars were sold in kit form, and it really was a very cheap form of excitement on the road to buy one of these cars. Great idea from the furtive mind of the late Colin Chapman. People even raced them in single-seater form, taking off the wings and all kinds of different lines there from these amateur drivers. Number 20 has a Tête-à-queue, Alain Nibar, but he recovers. So Bernard Perouche still leading. Number 20, Alain Nibar there. Really is a bit wild, that man. So the end of the second leg, and Bernard Perouche winning on aggregate and also scoring the fastest lap of 1:42.66. Well, that's undoubtedly the first historic Lotus 7 race that there's ever been on Screensport. Perouche there takes off his helmet, and as you can see, he's delighted with that success. Next up, Group 6 sports cars. Very small grid for this one. Some chevrons, Lola, old Elva BMW. There's a Chevron B8, the white coupe car. The leading car, Hans Markus Huber, Germany. The Chevron B21. A couple of the glorious Chevron B8s there, designed by Derek Bennett, who was so tragically killed in a hang gliding accident. The Elva BMW Mark 8 locking up under brakes. And there, a Lola T292, I should say. shades of the old European 2-litre sports car championship. People like Twan Hesemans and Arturo Mazzario and Brian Redman all raced in this series. In fact, there's a big revival of these cars in Britain. Marcus Pye of the Autosport magazine very much at the forefront of that particular revival. But it's an Elva Mark 8, Frank Nichols design, which we see going through the picture of the green car. But this is the leading car of Hans Markus Huber, and chased there by Richard Dodkins and his Chevron V8. Most of them came with BMW engines as Dodkins goes on the inside, and Huber obviously with a problem right at the finish. And a victory for Richard Dodkins from Britain. Second, the Swiss Hans Markus Huber, and third, Jan Proyart in the Lola T292. Now the Super Sport Series coming up. There's Henry Pescarolo, David Piper, Ford 3-litre with Mike Knight at the wheel. Well, these cars will be racing in just a few moments. This is the presentation. There's that GT40, a much older Ferrari that won't be competitive for those boys. Back then at Montlhery, a mouth-watering lineup of glorious sports cars of the 60s and 70s. There's Mike Knight. That's rare Ford machine, designed by Len Bailey. Mainly British drivers in this category, which has been put together by David Piper and Henri Pescarolo. They're in that Matra. Here's a list of the cars taking part. 3 different categories. Superb lineup of equipment. That's one of David Piper's Ferraris. It's Willie Tuckett, works in central London. Willie used to race a Chevron. And there's another glorious car. That was actually owned by the Roger Penske organisation and raced by Mark Donoghue in those very Sunoco colours. Absolutely glorious 512 Ferrari. Swiss owner these days.
J'ai eu une grande émotion de la retrouver exactement comme elle était quand
Henri Pescarolo being interviewed and saying it's a very big emotion for him. Driving Matras at Montlhery. In fact, being able to drive the 3 different cars, the 620, 650 and 670. So he's fairly nostalgic.
Demain, tu vas être au volant de la MS 650. Est-ce que tu
Could you tell us about the MS 650, this car number 15? Well, says Henri, it's the only car I haven't raced at Le Mans out of these 3. That was the year that I had a big accident. I watched a race on TV. I did subsequently drive this model on the Tour de France, so I know it quite well. Here it has got actually a Ford 5-litre engine because Matra wouldn't release one of their V12 engines. But he says it isn't a big problem. They actually tested with an engine like this. But when the car did race, it was with Beltoise at the wheel.
On te voit déjà dans une course de voitures de collection. Est-ce que ça annonce une retraite prochaine?
Vous savez, il n'y a pas besoin d'être devin pour savoir qu'à 48 ans, on va pas encore
we're asking Henri if being in these historic cars means that he's close to retirement. He says, well, I'm 48 years old. That doesn't mean I won't be driving in another 25 years' time. And he reminds us that he'll be racing at Le Mans, of course, in just a few weeks' time. Our interviewer said, will you be racing at Le Mans with the MS 650? No, of course, he says, I'll be racing for Reinhold Jost in a Porsche 962. And I'm looking forward to victory. Here's David Piper, and put the series together. What did David have to say?
The Porsche is lovely. It's very nice. I've had the Porsche. I bought it new in 1959, and I've had it ever since. It's a good car. We've just put a new engine in it because, unfortunately, Brian Redman was driving it in Japan and he broke the crankshaft. It wasn't his fault, but, you know, it's old age. So we've got a new engine in it now, and it's very good. It's the first time we've raced it.
So, David Piper, John Hunt, the Lola T70 on pole position. Pescarolo really getting to the task in the Matra on the front row of the grid. And look at that shunt. And, well, a lot of damage there. The number 14 car, and that is a great shame. Just very narrow at Montlhery. And, well, you saw the end result of all that. And that Lola T70 quite seriously damaged. So they roll up again. Have another go at the start. And this time it's a clean one. And John Hunt into an immediate lead with his T70 Mark 3B. Denny Holm won a lot of races in a car like that. Matra in second place. Bill Shepherd's Cobra going through. John Hunt, who is married to the former Janet Bryce, widow of the Grand Prix driver Tony Bryce, of course killed in the aeroplane accident with Graham Hill, Elstree. In fact, Janet and Tom Price's widow have got an antique shop, I believe, in West London. Lindsay Owen-Jones there in his Lola, saw him out earlier, chasing David Piper. Henry Pescarolo in the Whitfield-owned Matra. John Hunt leading. The rest of the field coming through. That glorious Porsche 908 there really being slid around. John Hunt used to hill climb, but now one of the quickest men in this Supersport series. Pescarolo, winner this year of the Daytona 24 Hours for Jost. Swoop down off the banking again. Le Grand Pesca really giving it a big go. I believe this is the only Matra which is in private ownership. Matra, of course, won Le Mans, breaking a long drought for France. I think it was something in the region of 30 years. So the Matra Ford looking extremely good. Some of the older cars going through the field. Number 10 is Bernd Becker with his, said it was a Porsche 908, but actually it's a Porsche 910, so I just look at it more closely. The car which followed the 908, Bernd Becker from Switzerland, he's had that car for a while. Glorious big Chevy engine there, pounding away. Car's probably got in excess of 500 brake horsepower. Mike Knight coming through in the Ford F3L. Wasn't a particularly well-loved car in its time. Great Australian racing driver Frank Gardner had some fairly strong words to say about it. There's David Piper in his 917. Glorious Porsche flat 12 engine, of course. So coming up to the checkered flag. And Pescarolo now dropping back. 1 lap to go. Pescarolo with brake problems, dropping back. David Piper moves up a place. David was very much involved in providing the cars for the famous Steve McQueen Le Mans film. In fact, he crashed very heavily in the filming, and in fact, sadly had to have a foot removed after that incident. Certainly doesn't slow him up on the racetrack, as you can see here. Pescarolo still soldiering on, and also is a great pilot. Has flown all around the world in some very small aircraft, single-handed. So, coming to the checkered flag. John Hunt. In fact, not yet the end of the race. Large crowd to see these cars of the 50s, 60s and 70s. Superb weekend at Montlhery. Very evocative. And again, you see Pesco really has slowed up now as Lindsay Owen-Jones goes past him in the red Lola T70. Designed by Eric Broadley. There was an open-top version of this car. This car produced for the GT series of the time and enormously successful. So John Hunt, David Piper, Lindsay Owen-Jones, Henry Pescarolo dropped back to 4th place. Porsche locks up the brakes and picks up a gear. Bernd Becker has great fun with that machine. There's Pesca. While Matra were building those sports prototypes, they're also, of course, racing in Formula 1. Pescarolo, Jean-Pierre Beltoise driving for them. Matra was subsequently to link up with the Simca organisation, and the cars were called Matra Simcas for a while. That number 17 car, actually in the colours of Team Surtees. The arrow at the front, John Surtees raced a car like that. I'm not sure if it was this particular example. Quite a few people having problems in this race, and Bill Tuckett in the P1 Ferrari had an oil seal problem, so he dropped out. Mike Knight in that Ford F3L, he was another chap in trouble early on. He dropped out and all the oil and water got itself mixed up. That Chevron's still going well. That's Chris Childs from ADA Engineering. There's Chris lying in 6th spot and leading his class. I said that Chris was from ADA, getting him mixed up with another gentleman. Chris is actually works for Istel and has been racing that Chevron for a number of years. Becker again. Those Lola T70s raced in the late 60s. And David Piper there attempting to wrest the lead from John Hunt. Meanwhile, the AC Cobra, a very different sort of motor car, of course, to these two front runners. Another man who did great things in T70s. In endurance races, they really weren't that successful. It was the 917, like David Piper's example, tended to win those races. But in the shorter races, particularly in Britain, the T70 Mark III was definitely the car to beat. All the way to the checkered flag. John Hunt just winning from David Piper. There's the result. Well, a splendid race and a splendid result. Let's talk to the winner, John Hunt.
It started off very tough, and I think about halfway through Henri started losing his brakes, and then I saw David coming up behind me, and I thought, as long as I can just keep it there, it'll be okay. And he worried me once or twice, David did. But otherwise, it was a good race.
A good race. Well, Britain's there on the podium. More action from Montlhery coming up in just a few moments. Back then at Montlhery, the Formula One event split into two parts. Look at that glorious Ferrari Dino, Cupolini at the wheel. Saw these cars earlier. This is the second leg of their events. The unusual traffic light with red in the middle. Lotus 24 stranded in the middle. Well, remember in part one, the Coopers contested the lead. And Cooper's first to second again. There's it, ERA pre-war machine going through. And the Talbot Largo. Philippe Renault. Lindsay Jones, 38, having yet another run. John Muir driving the ERA, English Racing Automobiles. There is that Ferrari. Ferrari from mid-50s. This car, 1959 vintage. And just going through the picture was a Connaught, which looked like one of the Grand Prix Streamliners to me. Hope we get another shot of that machine. As Chris Alford starting to fling the Lotus 24 around that car with a V8 Coventry Climax engine, 1.5 litres. Jim Clark raced a car like that. As we said earlier, this was the last of the space frame. Lotuses. The next model of the 25 was the innovative monocoque. ERA waves through John Harper. John chased by Lindsay Jones. And Lindsay Jones appearing to have problems there. And he pulls off, so John Harper's big rival from the earlier race, definitely out of the action. The yellow flag waved. Jerry Porter in second place, chased by the Ferrari and by Chris Alford. Here's the other Lotus 24 going down the inside of the Talbot Largo, which goes absolutely straight on. Philippe Renault. I remember that car's probably worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. So an excellent battle for second place. So well up, see the back of the car, Leventon's Lotus 18. In fact, that was the Formula 1 model before the one you see in the picture now, the Lotus 24. John Harper, is he having problems? Car picks up again. And those two extraordinary Panhards, driven by Gorski and Lafol. Wonderful machines, urging it on. Ferrari sweeps down off the banking again. Now the Ferrari in front of Jerry Porter. Porter outbrakes him. Two, of course, in completely different categories. That Cooper was really the first of the rear-engine Formula 1 cars of the late 50s. Remembering, of course, that Auto Union had engines in the rear pre-war, but then everybody went back to front-engined and really throwing the car out and just managing to collect it. Jerry Porter. Jerry's a London car trader. On the banking, the Dino's engine really stretches its legs. And a terrific scrap between these two. catching breath. And the two Panhards, well, they've been lapped a couple of times. It's drawn in the exhaust pipe, seems to come out of the front of the car. There's that Ferrari Dino. Undoubtedly that has the highest price tag of any car racing in this meeting. And yet again, John Harper seems to be having a problem with fuel starvation. Porter still flinging his Cooper around. Slightly older Cooper model, that one. I think that's a 1957 version. Coopers were built in Weybridge in Surrey, close to the famous Brooklands banking. Here the cars on the Montlhery banking. Just listen to that Ferrari, it sounds absolutely gorgeous. So the checkered flag. And the Ferrari goes through, acknowledges the cheers of the crowd. Overall, the result, John Harper, Cooperlini second, Porter third, Alford fourth, Hall fifth, and John, you're doing a good job finishing sixth in the ERA and winning Class A. Well, that's it from Montlhery. A superb dose of nostalgia, all kinds of different races. Great to see those wonderful mattress racing and these single-seaters. And there's our French reporter, also having a bit of fun. So, from us at Screensport, it's goodbye.
The one feature film.